Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the third and final part of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get to it. Alright, first question. Hi Jason, long-time subscriber. Any idea how to overcome elbow pain when doing weighted chins? Well, I have to settle for weighted pull-ups. Very heavy chins with dumbbells have caused tendonitis, I think. Thanks, and keep up the great content. Well, if you're developing tendonitis there, you're going to need to take a break from doing bicep work. All of it. You're going to have to let that heal. You're going to have to let that recover. It means you need to quit curling, quit chinning, quit doing pull-ups for a couple weeks. Just because you deloaded a little bit, if the tendonitis is still there, you've got a problem. You may have developed that tendonitis through any number of things, very likely overuse, but you need to chill, you need to recover. If you need to, you could go talk to a physical therapist about this, have them investigate it. Maybe do some light massaging area in there, potentially even look into some sort of art therapy or something. But no, you don't need to necessarily quit doing chin-ups. You're going to have to get over that tendonitis. And this is the problem we come to with people who don't listen to their body. 20-year-old kids get away with this stuff all the time. You start getting a little older when you start doing this. I'm going to do one more set, one more rep. I'm going to train to failure. I'm not going to deload. Well, that's well and good. That's cute. Until you start developing tendonitis due to poor exercise selection, overuse. Then what are you going to do? Then you can't do curls and chin-ups? Or you can't do any tricep extensions at all? Again, this sort of nonsense that you see all these kids do, go hard or go home, who half the time are weak as hell anyways. I mean, you see people who have that mentality who can't even deadlift 500 pounds. I mean, let that sink in. When, there are plenty of guys out there pulling over 500 who most people think don't train that hard. Minimalist training and stuff. So again, perspective here, guys, perspective. Because once you start developing tendonitis, once you start developing overuse problems, you're basically screwed. You're going to have to take downtime to heal, recover, and do therapy before you're going to be able to do the exercises you want to do again without pain all the time. So was that whole mentality of one more push through, was it really worth it? Was it worth it? Lesson learned. Chalk it up to experience, brother. Alright, next question. Hey Jason, is it necessary to hit a muscle at different rep ranges throughout the week in order to get the better hypertrophy gains and, say, train them always in the same rep range? Thanks for answering the question, coach. Keep up your good work. No, absolutely not. No, it's not a requirement at all. I'm not saying different rep ranges don't have their uses. I'm not saying concurrent training doesn't have its place. I'm not saying linear periodization doesn't have its place. But if you're trying to chase hypertrophy, you can do the exact same rep range every day through a whole phase of your training. All right, it isn't necessary. It's not necessary. The purpose of varying rep ranges has purely to do with recovery and carryover. Lower reps with heavy weight, if the volume is the same, produces the same hypertrophy that anything else does. Workload is what produces hypertrophy. You get stronger. You get stronger. Therefore, you will gain muscle faster from those until you get to a point to where you start running into walls in terms of recovery, frequency gets messed up, everything else. So there's a downside to heavy all the time. Also, the time spent in the gym. Same thing, higher rep ranges let you get out of the gym faster and stimulate the same amount of hypertrophy, but you will oftentimes hit a strength wall faster, not necessarily the recovery wall you will with heavy. And so you run into issues there, but it's not necessary to incorporate multiple rep ranges. It can be a valuable tool to do so in the right context, but it is absolutely not a requirement for maximum growth. And if you do it in the wrong context and don't understand how to use the varying rep ranges correctly, you might actually shortchange yourself. I would rather someone who's not educated on exercise science and training programming to not rotate rep ranges. I would rather they not do so, because they're going to do it wrong and shortchange themselves. At least if they stick in the same rep range, they're more likely to get some consistent overload. So there's different ways of looking at it. All right, next question. Jason, I always train in the evening. Would it be okay to do my cardio several hours before the gym? I'm already doing about an hour on my bike on my off days running your novice program. No. No, unless by several hours you mean you do your cardio first thing in the morning, and then you have a full day, like 12 hours of eating and rest or whatever else you're doing with your work day and all of that before you go into it. The evening training makes it a little more tricky, and I'm an advocate of doing cardio every day, but you need to understand my novice program is a very demanding program. Very demanding program. And I would rather see a minimum of 8 hours. If you're going to train it in the evening and you're going to do cardio the same day, I'd like to see 8 hours separated between your cardio and your training, hopefully several meals, plenty of carbs, and then go in and do it. And as far as that goes, you guys know I do a lot of cardio. I do, by some people's standards, an insane amount of cardio, of low intensity, less cardio. My squatting and deadlifting days, I absolutely do not do even 5 minutes of cardio before I train. Absolutely not on those days. I save it till after I'm done. Bench press day, I don't mind doing an hour of cardio sometimes first, but never ever on a squat or a deadlift day, which is every day on my novice program. You can see how that could start to become a problem there. So that's what I would recommend you do with it. I'm not saying don't do it, but you really need to separate them out because of the intensive nature of this program. All right, next question. Hey Jason, my mother's in her 50s and has bad knees as well as pain in her joints. I used to tell her she should work on mobility, learn to squat, lose weight, which is necessary, but apparently her doctor told her not to squat because it's dangerous and she's convinced it's bad for her knees. Instead, she is doing light cardio and bike walking and knee extensions. Do you think she should listen to her doctor, or should I try to convince her otherwise? And ideally, what she should do in this situation? Thank you, coach. Oh man, tough stuff. You know, there are actual medical doctors who are part of Ripto's starting strength thing. If you guys go check that out, there are medical doctors who give lectures on this stuff who are both MDs and coaches there, and they explain that there's a lot of misunderstandings in the medical community. Now, the problem you have is that because she's older and already has knee problems, you're not qualified to teach her. Her doctor's wrong in that squats are bad for your knees, but he's right in the sense of her has no business learning to squat from someone who isn't a really qualified strength coach. And when I use that term strength coach, I don't mean someone who has a PT certificate. They're not qualified to teach her to squat, most likely, if she already has bad knees. She really needs to go to a strength specialist, someone who actually has experience working with both athletes and the elderly population. She really needs kind of a specialized coach. And yes, it will fix her bad knees. Yes, it will fix her problems, but she really needs a very, very qualified individual to help her with that. And again, odds are you probably are not going to be qualified to teach her. She needs to seek out a specialized coach. Now, the problem we get into is that convincing her to do that, I don't know how to convince her. It's your mother, not mine. You know what? I could never convince my mother to do anything for her health, and my mother died at 48. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't convince my mother that smoking cigarettes was bad for her, that her 2 packs a day was going to kill her young. So, you know, what do I do? I'm just a kid. So that's ultimately the problem you run into. It can be very difficult to convince your parents to do anything for their health, particularly if what her doctors told her doesn't mesh completely with what you're telling her. You're going to have an uphill battle, and I don't know what to tell you there, brother. But I will tell you that you do need to try, because, you know, you only get one mother. She only gets one body. I understand. Do the best you can. All right, next question and last question of the week, and it's going to be very off topic. For the firearm channel, which just won't be, it'll be on this channel. Can you go over why you recommend the 9mm Federal HST 147 versus this 124, even though the velocity rating on the 124 is higher? And I'm not going to go into his other stuff. He talked about barrel lengths. There's a lot of other factors there. Why do I carry for my EDC 147 HST instead of 124, even though arguably the 124 has better energy, better velocity? Has to do with penetration and size of targets. I actually have to factor in my individual circumstances with this stuff. I have crazy kooky ass stalkers. All right, I have told police I am going to shoot any of those stalkers if they harass me or show up. because I'm in the fitness world, and everyone gets kooky stalkers on YouTube. That's normal. People who are going to probably be a problem for me probably lift weights, and they probably use anabolics. Therefore, they have more muscle tissue than the average person. If I was dealing with a 140-pound crackhead, I would be more comfortable with the 124s. Again, better velocity. The 147s have better tissue penetration as a general rule when you're dealing with any expanding hollow point in a handgun. The heavier it is, you're going to probably have slightly less expansion and overall better tissue penetration, due to better momentum, even if kinetic energy is lower. Simply put, better penetration, because I statistically am more likely to be confronted by someone who lifts weights and who might be a little bit crazy from their gear use and gets this weird idea in their head that they're going to come attack a YouTuber, fitness YouTuber. So in my case, that is the actual reason I use the 147. And it's that simple. They're both fine choices. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.